You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling through news, trying to keep up, and
Mhm.
sometimes, well, stories just don't quite seem to add up.
Exactly. And that's what we try to do here, basically. Take these sources you send us or things we find and really unpack them.
Yeah, cut through the noise, get to the core insights. So today we're doing a deep dive into just one source. It's an audio analysis, and the title is pretty striking.
It definitely is. It's called Wow, Watch CNN Accidentally Air the Truth about the hashtag borderline event while lying.mp3.
So yeah, that title alone gives you a pretty clear idea of the angle, doesn't it? A certain kind of media criticism.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
our mission really is just to explore what this specific source is claiming. It looks closely at media reporting, specifically around the tragic borderline bar and grill shooting in Thousand Oaks, California.
right.
And it focuses on alleged discrepancies between, what was said on air and certain video footage and testimonies.
Mm.
This source claims there are some major inconsistencies.
Okay, got it. So we're exploring the claims within this audio file. Let's unpack this.
Right.
So the source kicks off by talking about how CNN verbally described the shooting. What picture were they painting, according to this analysis?
Well, the source highlights that CNN called it a deadly mass shooting. Even specifically, the deadliest mass shooting in this country in 12 days.
Okay.
And they reported 12 people murdered, including a sheriff's deputy. So very serious, very tragic framing right away.
In the setting, what did CNN reportedly say about the bar itself?
According to the source, CNN described it as a Southern California bar filled with college students. It was apparently hosting a weekly college country music night.
Ah, okay, so a specific kind of event.
Yeah, and the atmosphere described was, lively, line dancing, music playing, people laughing, yelling, just generally having a good time. That's the scene CNN reportedly set.
Gotcha. A busy place then. Did the source mention CNN reporting on numbers? Like how many people?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
The analysis notes CNN reported more than a dozen others were injured. And crucially, that police say there were hundreds of people inside the bar,
Hundreds.
which implies, a really packed venue and potentially a wide age range, not just college kids maybe.
And what about the immediate aftermath, the chaos?
Well, the source says CNN described a scene of intense panic, people being ordered to get down on the ground.
Right.
Many were breaking windows, throwing chairs through windows in order to escape. Just a mob of people trying to run away.
Yeah.
Pure chaos, basically.
And the source also points out who CNN initially identified as victims, right?
Yes. According to the analysis, CNN specifically mentioned a front doorman bouncer and the cashier as the initial victims.
Okay. So that's a verbal picture painted by CNN as presented by our source. But then things shift when video comes into play, right?
Exactly. This is where the source really digs in its heels. It highlights the moment Wolf Blitzer introduces
Yeah.
video, calling it new video from inside the bar during the shooting.
And Blitzer apparently warned viewers.
Yeah, the source notes he cautioned it was potentially disturbing, even a horrific, truly horrifying look inside the massacre. Strong words.
But then the narrator of our source watches this supposedly horrifying video and sees something very different.
Totally different according to the narrator.
Yeah.
This is really the core of their argument. Instead of chaos and hundreds of people, the narrator describes seeing almost nobody.
Like literally nobody.
Well, almost. They specifically mention a dude with a baseball cap with his left elbow propped up on the counter with his chin in his hand, just sort of hanging out.
Okay.
And then maybe one person in the back that came up from behind a wall. But that's it.
Wow. So instead of a packed college night, just one or two people.
That's what the narrator claims is visible. They emphasize what's missing. An empty dance floor, aren't any people, isn't any blood.
No blood.
No blood visible, according to the narrator. Also, no music, no line dancing, and maybe most importantly, no screaming during the key moments.
Huh. What about sounds then? If there was no screaming initially, what did the narrator hear in the video?
Good question. The source analysis says they heard something that sounds like glass being shuffled around, like maybe broken glass.
Yeah.
Followed by 9 shots. And then after the shots, just silence.
Silence, not chaos and screaming mobs.
Not according to the narrator's description of the video, no. They say after the silence, the camera dude hits the crash bar on the door and starts running and screaming outside.
Outside.
Yes. Leaving behind what the narrator calls an empty bar. And only then, apparently, are some girls screaming in the background, heard, seemingly from outside, too.
Interesting. And the source narrator also commented on the speed of the shots, didn't they?
They did. They make a specific point. 9 shot sounds in 8 seconds. The narrator argues that's not exactly very quickly.
Implying it contradicts the idea of someone just spraying bullets rapidly.
That seems to be the implication, yes, that the sound doesn't match the description of indiscriminate rapid firing.
So, okay, we have this stark contrast presented by the source. The verbal description versus their interpretation of the visual and audio evidence. Then the source moves on to witness testimony.
Right. It analyzes an interview with a witness. And this witness describes a very different experience inside the bar.
What do they say?
Well, this witness talks about hearing the gunshots, seeing the shooter, then everyone yelled, "Get down." A big rush for a back door, people dogpiling on top of each other.
Okay, that sounds more like the initial CNN description.
Exactly. The witness mentions a couple seconds of silence, then people running again, huge panic, being trampled. They even mention being lifted up by some guy and a bar stool thrown at my head to break a window for escape.
A very dramatic account. How does the source narrator react to that testimony, given their analysis of the video?
Well, they basically challenge every single point, comparing it back to the video they described. They're quite direct.
Like how?
They say things like, "We didn't see you in the video," referring to the witness. About the dogpiling? That's not on the tape either.
Huh.
They argue the silence lasted way more than a couple seconds. They counter the huge panic claim with, "We didn't see huge panic either."
Okay, very pointed.
Yeah, even getting a bit sarcastic, asking about being trampled. Trampled by what? Dust particles. And questioning the rescuer. An invisible guy.
So, directly implying the witness account doesn't match the visual evidence as the source interprets it.
Precisely. Then the analysis turns to Phil Mudd, the CNN counterterrorism analyst.
Right, the former CIA official. Blitzer introduces him, again calling the video very disturbing. What was Mudd's take, according to the source?
Mudd's reaction, as presented in the source audio, is intense. He says, "It's difficult for me to recall if I've seen anything more horrific and truly horrifying."
Wow. Same video the narrator described as nearly empty.
Apparently so. And Mudd goes on to analyze the shooter's mindset, claiming the person shot indiscriminately, shot a lot of rounds quickly, wasn't picking out targets, and just wanted to go in and shoot as many people as he could.
And how does the source narrator square that analysis with the video they described?
They don't, basically. The narrator expresses, total disbelief. They question how anyone could conclude indiscriminate shooting or intend to kill as many people as possible based on footage of what they saw as an empty room with no targets.
A fundamental disagreement on interpreting the same piece of evidence.
Absolutely. The source also highlights Mudd praising law enforcement for incredible courage going into a dark environment.
And the narrator?
The narrator juxtaposes that with their view of the scene, sarcastically questioning the courage needed for what they perceived as an empty building.
Huh. Okay. So after dissecting the event coverage itself, the source kind of zooms out a bit, right? Looks at the broader conversation.
Yeah, it includes clips and commentary reflecting the wider public and political reactions presented in the media as analyzing.
What kind of reactions does it focus on?
There's a definite focus on calls for gun control, repeated phrases like, "No more guns."
Okay.
It features one mother, quite prominently, who says explicitly she doesn't want prayers or thoughts. She wants gun control.
A common sentiment after such events.
Yes, and other similar views are included, like people who have problems should not have guns, and calls for politicians to step up and do something.
Yeah.
It also, interestingly, briefly includes Robbie Parker, who the source identifies as a family member from the Sandy Hook shooting.
Right, so it shows that part of the discourse. Now, to bring it all together, what's the source narrator's final conclusion, their big takeaway from all these alleged discrepancies?
Well, having laid out all these contrasts, the narrator lands on some pretty strong claims. They essentially state that CNN's lying.
Just flat out lying.
That's the assertion, or, they suggest, the only other explanation for the video is absurdity, like hundreds of invisible college students silently line dance to no music. They use that imagery to underscore how impossible they think the official narrative is based on the visual.
And they offer an explanation for why this alleged lying might be happening.
They do. The narrator calls the whole situation Mount Crazy, even uses the term coup de grace insanity, suggesting a total loss of reason. And then they float the idea that it might even be a deliberate psychological operation.
A psych-up. To what end?
According to the narrator's theory, it's possibly designed to see how blatantly they can make their lies and just how many people will actually buy those lies. So a test of public gullibility, essentially. That's where the source's interpretation leads.
That's quite a claim. And the source finishes with some self-promotion.
Yeah, the narrator plugs their own decentralized channels, email lists, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they mention merchandise with slogans that reveal more of their general worldview.
Such as,
Things like CNN is a communist news network, 9/11 was a lie, and the general principle that all official stories should be questioned gives you a broader sense of their perspective.
okay. So wrapping up the specific source then, what have we really unpacked here?
Well, we've looked closely at one particular analysis, right? One that scrutinizes media reporting, specifically CNN's, on a tragic event. It highlights what it sees as really stark contrasts between the words used and the video evidence shown.
Yeah.
And then it offers its own very strong, very critical interpretation of why those discrepancies might exist, leading to some pretty provocative conclusions about media manipulation and even psyops.
And for you, listening, this really underscores that constant challenge, doesn't it? How to navigate news, how to evaluate information, especially when different parts of a story, the words, the pictures seem to clash. It
Right.
kind of forces you to think about how you weigh different kinds of evidence, how you decide what makes sense.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. When you encounter news reports, especially about complex or chaotic events, how do you personally handle conflicting information? If the visuals seem to tell one story and the narration another, how do you go about forming your own understanding? It's definitely something to think about.